Christmas dinner at the Harrison family table had always been about appearances. Crystal glasses, imported china, and conversations designed to showcase everyone's achievements from the past year. This Christmas Eve was no different except for the fact that I was apparently about to be disowned. "Sophia, we need to discuss your living situation," my mother announced, cutting into her prime rib with surgical precision. Her voice carried that particular tone she used when she was about to deliver bad news while maintaining perfect dinner party etiquette. I looked up from my plate, fork halfway to my mouth. Around the mahogany table sat my entire family. My parents, my older brother Marcus with his wife Jennifer, and my younger sister Ashley with her fiancé David. Everyone was dressed in their Christmas finest, the dining room glowing with candlelight and expensive decorations. "What about my living situation, Mom?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I knew where this was going. "Well, dear," she said, not making eye contact, "your father and I have been discussing it and we think it's time you found your own place." My father nodded gravely. "You're 28 years old, Sophia. It's embarrassing to tell people our daughter still lives at home. Especially since you can barely afford to take care of yourself," Marcus added, smirking as he reached for his wine glass. "I mean, what do you even do for work? That little computer thing." "I do web development," I said quietly. "Right, playing on computers all day," Ashley chimed in. "While the rest of us have real careers." Jennifer, who worked as a nurse, looked uncomfortable but said nothing. David, a financial advisor, just concentrated on his food. "The point is," my mother continued, her voice taking on that sharp edge I knew so well, "you're too broke for this family. We have a certain standard to maintain, and frankly, your situation reflects poorly on all of us." I felt my cheeks burning. "Too broke for this family? Look at your siblings," my father said, gesturing around the table. "Marcus is a successful attorney-making partner at his firm. Ashley is a marketing director at a Fortune 500 company. Even David here manages portfolios worth millions of dollars. And you," my mother added, finally looking at me directly, "live in our guest room, drive a 12-year-old Toyota, and from what we can tell make maybe $30,000 a year doing whatever it is you do on that computer." "It's web development," I repeated. "Whatever. The point is it's not working out. We've decided you need to move out by New Year's Day." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the corner, the soft classical music playing from the sound system, even the subtle hum of the expensive wine refrigerator in the kitchen. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked. "That's not our problem anymore," my father said coldly. "You're an adult. Figure it out." Marcus leaned back in his chair with a satisfied expression. "Maybe this will finally motivate you to get serious about your life. Find a real job, meet someone with actual prospects. Unlike your current situation," Ashley added, "which is basically like having a live-in teenager who never grew up." I stared at my plate, feeling smaller with each word. This wasn't entirely unexpected. My family had never hidden their disappointment in my career choices or lifestyle. But having it laid out so brutally on Christmas Eve felt particularly cruel. "I don't understand," I said slowly. "I pay rent. I buy my own food. I don't ask you for money." $300 a month isn't rent," my mother scoffed. "It's charity. And frankly, we're tired of pretending this arrangement works for anyone. We're thinking of converting your room into a home office anyway," my father added. "Something more productive." That's when my phone rang. The ringtone cut through the tense silence like a knife. Everyone at the table turned to look at me with varying degrees of annoyance. "Turn that off," my mother hissed. "We're having a family discussion." But I glanced at the caller ID and froze. It was a number I recognized immediately, my private banking advisor at Goldman Sachs. "I need to take this," I said. "Absolutely not," my father said firmly. "Whatever telemarketer is calling you can wait." "It's not a telemarketer. It's my bank." Marcus laughed. "Your bank? What bank calls people on Christmas Eve? And what could they possibly want with you?" I looked around the table at my family's faces, skeptical, dismissive, and increasingly irritated. Something inside me snapped. "You know what? You're right. Let's find out what they want." I answered the call and immediately put it on speaker. "Good evening, Ms. Harrison. This is Richard Pemberton from Goldman Sachs Private Wealth Management. I apologize for calling on Christmas Eve, But I wanted to personally inform you about an urgent matter regarding your account. The entire table went silent. My mother's fork, which had been halfway to her mouth, stopped mid-air. What kind of matter, Richard? I asked calmly. Well, as you know, we've been managing the diversification of your investment portfolio, and I'm pleased to inform you that your account has crossed a significant milestone. As of market close today, your total assets under management with us have exceeded $127 million. You could have heard a pin drop. My mother's fork clattered to her plate. I wanted to personally congratulate you, Richard continued, and discuss some additional investment opportunities that might interest someone in your position. We have some exclusive offerings for clients with portfolios of your magnitude. Marcus's wine glass froze halfway to his lips. Additionally, Richard went on, I wanted to confirm that the $2.3 million quarterly distribution from your various business holdings has been processed and should appear in your checking account tomorrow morning. Ashley's mouth fell open. I also wanted to let you know that the real estate acquisition you've been considering, that commercial property in downtown Portland, we've been able to negotiate the price down to $8.7 million. Shall I proceed with the purchase? My father looked like he was seeing a ghost. Richard, I said, maintaining my composure even though my heart was pounding, can I call you back tomorrow? I'm in the middle of dinner with my family. Of course, Ms. Harrison. And might I add, your cryptocurrency investments have performed exceptionally well this quarter. The diversification strategy we discussed has really paid off. Enjoy your holiday and we'll speak soon. Thank you, Richard. Have a wonderful Christmas. I hung up the phone and set it down beside my plate. Then I picked up my fork and took a bite of my prime rib as if nothing had happened. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat. Who was that? My private wealth manager at Goldman Sachs, I replied calmly. You're what? My mother whispered. My private wealth manager. Richard Pemberton. Really nice guy. Harvard MBA, manages portfolios for high net worth individuals. High net worth. Ashley's voice came out as a squeak. Well, their minimum for private wealth management is usually around $10 million in assets, but they made an exception for me when I hit $5 million about 3 years ago. My father was staring at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Sophia, what is going on? What do you mean? That phone call, $127 million. Is this some kind of joke? I set down my fork and looked around the table at my family's stunned faces. No joke, Dad. That's my current net worth, give or take a few million depending on market fluctuations. That's impossible, Marcus said flatly. You live in our guest room and drive a 12-year-old car. I live in your guest room because it's convenient and I travel a lot for work. I drive a 12-year-old car because it's reliable and I don't care about status symbols. What work? My mother demanded. You said you do web development. I do. Among other things. Jennifer, who had been silent through the entire dinner conversation, finally spoke up. Sophia, are you saying you're actually wealthy? Extremely wealthy, yes. The word, extremely, seemed to hit the table like a physical blow. How? Ashley whispered. I took a sip of wine. A $200 bottle my parents had been saving for a special occasion, though I'd been buying similar bottles by the case for my own collection. Well, the web development thing was true initially. About 8 years ago, I started a small company doing custom websites for local businesses. Pretty standard stuff. But I noticed that most of my clients needed the same basic features: inventory management, customer databases, payment processing, that sort of thing. My family listened with rapt attention as if I was telling them a fairy tale. So I developed a comprehensive business management platform, basically software that could handle everything a small to medium business needs to operate. Instead of charging clients for individual websites, I started licensing the software. How much does software like that cost? David asked quietly. It was the first thing he'd said all evening. The base license starts at about $500 per month per business. But most clients upgrade to premium packages that run between $2,000 and $5,000 monthly, depending on their needs. I could see Marcus trying to do math in his head. How many clients do you have? He asked. Currently, about 3,200 active licensees. The table went silent again as everyone processed those numbers. That's... My father began. Between $1.6 million and $16 million per month in recurring revenue, yes, I finished. Though most clients are in the $2,500 range, so we average about $8 million monthly. My mother asked faintly. I have a team of about 150 employees now. Developers, customer service, sales, marketing. We're actually headquartered in that new tech building downtown. Harrison Digital Solutions occupies floors 12 through 15. Harrison Digital Solutions, Ashley repeated slowly. That's your company? That's one of my companies, yes. One of your companies? My father's voice cracked slightly. Well, the software business was doing well, so I started investing in other ventures. I own a digital marketing agency, 3 online retail companies, and I've been doing angel investing in tech startups for the past 4 years. I paused to take another bite of prime rib. Plus real estate, of course. Commercial properties, some residential developments, a few vacation rentals in popular markets. The cryptocurrency thing he mentioned, Marcus said weakly. Oh, that. Yeah, I got into Bitcoin and Ethereum pretty early. 2016, I think. That investment alone is worth about $23 million now. My mother set down her wine glass with a shaking hand. Sophia, this is unbelievable. I know it's a lot to process. Why didn't you tell us? Ashley demanded, her voice rising. Why let us think you were struggling? I considered the question carefully. When would I have told you? During which conversation were you asked about my work with genuine interest instead of dismissing it as playing on computers? The accusation hung in the air. We ask about your work, my mother protested weakly. No, you don't. You ask when I'm going to get a real job. You ask when I'm going to stop wasting my time with computers. You ask when I'm going to find a nice man with a stable career and settle down properly. I looked around the table. Marcus, when's the last time you asked me about my business? Not when I was going to change careers, but actually asked what I do day to day. He had no answer. Ashley? When have you ever shown interest in my projects? She stared at her plate. Mom, Dad, when have either of you ever asked to see my work or wanted to understand what I've built? The silence was deafening. But that's not even the real reason I didn't tell you, I continued. The real reason is that your love always felt conditional. Marcus is valuable because he's a lawyer. Ashley is valuable because she has a corporate job. I was the disappointment because I didn't fit your definition of success. That's not true, my father said, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? 20 minutes ago, you told me I was too broke for this family and demanded I move out. What changed? The only thing that's different now is that you know I have money. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Sophia, we love you. Do you love me, or do you love the idea of having a wealthy daughter? Because 5 minutes ago, you were ready to cut me off completely. The truth of that statement settled over the table like a heavy blanket. We had no idea, my father said quietly. That's the point, Dad. You had no idea because you never wanted to know. You decided who I was based on superficial observations and never bothered to look deeper. Jennifer cleared her throat gently. Sophia, can I ask you something? Sure. Why do you still live here? With that kind of money you could live anywhere. I smiled at her. She was the only one who'd asked a question that seemed to come from curiosity rather than shock or defensiveness. Honestly, I travel about half the year for business. When I'm home, I like being around family, even when they think I'm a failure. This house has good memories for me. And the guest room has great internet connectivity, which is all I really need for work. Plus, I added, I've been looking at houses, but I'm pretty particular. I put an offer on a place in the hills last month. 4,000 square feet, pool, home office, 3-car garage. But the sellers wanted $2.8 million, and I thought that was overpriced for the neighborhood. Marcus made a choking sound. You were going to spend $2.8 million on a house? Ashley asked. Well, I offered $2.4 million. They countered at $2.60, but I decided to keep looking. No point in overpaying even if you can afford it. My mother put her head in her hands. I feel like I don't know you at all. You don't, I said gently. But you could. If you wanted to. We do want to, my father said quickly. Of course we do. Do you? Because earlier today you were embarrassed to tell people I live here. Now that you know I'm wealthy, are you going to be proud to tell people your daughter is a successful entrepreneur? He had no answer for that. I don't need your pride, Dad. I've been successful for years without it. But if we're going to have a relationship going forward, it needs to be based on who I actually am, not on your assumptions about who you think I should be. What does that mean? My mother asked. It means you need to decide whether you love your daughter Sophia, who builds software companies and makes smart investments and drives old cars because she thinks new cars are a waste of money, or whether you only love the idea of having a wealthy daughter you can brag about. I stood up from the table. I'm going to go upstairs and pack some things. Richard mentioned that commercial property deal and I want to review the numbers tonight. I'll probably fly to Portland tomorrow to take a look at it in person. Wait, Marcus said. You're leaving. Well, you did tell me to be out by New Year's. I figured I'd get a head start. But, we didn't know, Ashley protested. No, you didn't. But you also didn't ask. You made assumptions about my life and then made decisions based on those assumptions. The fact that your assumptions were wrong doesn't change the fact that you were willing to cut me off based on what you thought was my financial situation. I headed toward the doorway, then turned back. For what it's worth, I never needed you to support me financially. But I did need you to support me emotionally. To believe in me. To be curious about my life instead of dismissive. My mother's voice was small. How can we fix this? I don't know if you can. But if you want to try, start by figuring out whether you're proud of me for building something meaningful, or just impressed that I have money. I went upstairs to pack, leaving my family sitting in stunned silence around their expensive Christmas dinner. 2 hours later, as I was loading my suitcase into my embarrassing 12-year-old Toyota, my mother appeared in the doorway. Sophia, please don't go. I paused. Why? Because you're right. About all of it. We've been terrible parents to you and terrible siblings, she said, glancing back toward the house where I could see Marcus and Ashley watching through the window. And we want the chance to do better. Mom, you can't just flip a switch and suddenly be different. I know. But we can try. We can start asking the right questions. We can start seeing you for who you are instead of who we expected you to be. She stepped closer. Can you tell me about your business? Not the money part, but what you actually do. What problems you solve for people. I studied her face, looking for signs that this was just an attempt to manage the situation. But what I saw was genuine curiosity, maybe for the first time. You really want to know? I really want to know. I closed the trunk of my car and leaned against it. Well, most small business owners are incredibly talented at their craft. They're amazing bakers or brilliant mechanics or creative artists. But they're terrible at business administration. They spend half their time wrestling with inventory systems and customer databases instead of doing what they love. My mother nodded, actually listening. So I built software that handles all the administrative work automatically. A bakery owner can focus on creating amazing cakes instead of tracking flour supplies and managing customer orders. A mechanic can focus on fixing cars instead of struggling with appointment scheduling and parts inventory. That sounds wonderful, she said, and I could tell she meant it. It is. I get emails from clients telling me the software gave them their lives back. That they can spend time with their families again because they're not staying up until midnight doing paperwork. That must feel incredible. It does. It's the best part of what I do. We stood there for a moment in comfortable silence. The money is nice, I continued, but the real satisfaction comes from solving problems for people. From building something that makes life easier for thousands of small business owners. I'm proud of you, my mother said quietly. Are you proud of me or proud of my bank account? She considered the question seriously. I'm proud that you saw a problem and solved it. I'm proud that you built something meaningful. I'm proud that you help people. It was the first time she'd ever said she was proud of my work rather than wishing I'd chosen different work. And I'm ashamed that it took learning about your financial success for me to ask about your actual accomplishments. Mom. No, let me finish. You were right earlier. We made your worth contingent on meeting our expectations instead of celebrating who you are. That was wrong. She wiped tears from her eyes. Can you give us another chance? Can you stay for Christmas morning and let us try to be the family you deserved all along? I looked at the house where I'd grown up, where I'd always felt like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. Where I'd learned to hide my successes because they weren't the right kind of successes. But I also thought about Jennifer's question earlier. About why I chose to stay here despite having unlimited options. The truth was, I loved my family even when they didn't understand me. Even when they disappointed me. Okay, I said. But things have to be different. They will be. I mean it, Mom. I'm not going to pretend to be struggling to make you feel better about yourselves. And I'm not going to be your trophy daughter that you show off to friends. I'm just going to be me. That's all we want. As we walked back toward the house, my mother asked, "Can I ask you one more thing?" "Sure. The commercial property in Portland, what kind of business are you planning?" I smiled. "Actually, I'm thinking of opening a co-working space specifically for entrepreneurs and small business owners. Somewhere they can work alongside other people who understand the challenges of building something from scratch." "That sounds perfect for you." "I think so too." As we reached the front door, she paused. "Sophia, I love you. Not your bank account, not your success. You. I'm sorry it took me so long to make that clear. I love you too, Mom." Christmas morning was different. Instead of the usual gift exchange focused on expensive items nobody really wanted, we spent hours talking. Marcus asked detailed questions about my software development process. Ashley wanted to understand how I identified good investment opportunities. My father, surprisingly, was most interested in my management philosophy and how I built company culture. For the first time in years, I felt like they were actually seeing me. "You know," my father said as we sat around the tree, coffee cups in hand, "I owe you an apology beyond just last night's dinner." "What do you mean?" "I've been telling people for years that my youngest daughter was still figuring things out. I realize now that you weren't figuring things out. You'd already figured them out. You were just doing it differently than I expected." "Dad, you don't need to." "Yes, I do. I'm proud of you, Sophia. Not because of your money, but because you built something meaningful while staying true to your values. Because you saw opportunities where others saw problems. Because you're generous and thoughtful and brilliant." He paused. "And because you had the grace to forgive us for being blind to who you really are." As I looked around at my family, really looked at them maybe for the first time in years, I realized something important. Money had always been their language of success and security. Learning about my financial situation didn't change who I was, but it did translate my accomplishments into terms they could understand. The real question was whether we could build a relationship based on deeper understanding, not just shared vocabulary. "So," Ashley said with a grin, "want to tell us about some of those other business ventures? I'm particularly curious about the angel investing." I smiled, settling back into my chair. "Well, there's this fascinating startup working on sustainable packaging solutions." And for the first time in years, my family leaned in to listen. The commercial property deal in Portland fell through. I decided the neighborhood wasn't quite right for my co-working space concept. But I did find a perfect building in Seattle 3 months later. My family helped me celebrate the opening. Marcus handled some of the legal work, Ashley consulted on the marketing strategy, and my parents flew out for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. When the local news interviewed me about the new business, my mother stood beside me, beaming with genuine pride. "This is my daughter," she told the reporter. "She builds businesses that help other people succeed. Not my wealthy daughter, or my successful daughter. Just my daughter." It was the best introduction she'd ever given me.